The exam hall was too quiet. Rows of alien students sat in perfect order, their eyes glowing in different colors, their hands moving over strange crystal tablets. Each sound, every click, every hum, seemed to press on the human boy sitting in the last row. His name was Daniel. He was the only human in the entire class. Daniel's heart raced. He knew he was not ready. The exam in front of him looked like endless puzzles written in alien symbols. Some symbols looked familiar now, after months of study, but most of them were like a maze of fireflies dancing on the page. He had studied all night, but his mind was blank. At the front of the room stood the professor, tall, silent, watching. Professor Zelthor was unlike any other alien Daniel had seen. His body shimmered with silver scales, and two long horns curved from his head like a crown. His eyes glowed blue, cold like ice, but they never blinked. Students whispered that he could read minds. Some even said he was older than the city itself. Daniel tried to focus on the exam, but his hands shook. He had left his home, Earth, to study here at the Galactic University, hoping to prove that humans could learn what even ancient aliens struggled to master. But now, staring at the impossible exam, he knew the truth. He was going to fail. The professor's steps echoed as he moved slowly down the rows. Every alien student kept their head low, afraid to even breathe too loud. When Zelthor passed by, the air itself seemed heavier, as if gravity bent around him. And then, he stopped. Right beside Daniel. Daniel froze. He didn't dare look up. His paper was almost blank, only a few answers scribbled that he wasn't even sure about. He could feel the professor's gaze burning through him. Finally, the alien spoke, his voice deep and echoing, like stone grinding against stone. "You are human." The words were not a question. They were a statement, a fact, but the way he said them made Daniel's chest tighten. "Yes, Professor," Daniel whispered. His voice cracked. The professor leaned closer. His glowing eyes were so close now that Daniel could see strange patterns moving inside them, like stars swirling in a galaxy. "You are failing this exam," Zelthor said calmly. Daniel's heart sank. He wanted to speak, to defend himself, to explain how hard he had tried, but no words came out. Instead, the professor continued, "But there is another way." The room felt colder. Daniel dared to lift his head a little, his eyes wide. "Another way?" Zelthor nodded slowly, his horns glinting in the light. He looked around the room, making sure no one else was listening, and then lowered his voice. "If you wish to pass, you must do something for me." Daniel blinked. His chest pounded so hard he thought the other students could hear it. The professor, this strict, mysterious being, was offering him a deal. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked carefully. Zelthor's gaze grew sharper. "There is a place in this university that no one enters, a place forbidden, hidden under the library. Inside lies something I lost long ago. If you bring it to me, you will pass this exam, and more." Daniel's mouth went dry. A forbidden place? Something lost? Why him? But why me? Daniel whispered. The professor straightened, towering over him. "Because only a human can pass the trials within. These halls were not built for my kind. They were built for yours. Do you understand?" Daniel's mind spun. What was this professor saying? This giant alien needed him? A human boy who could barely write the exam answers? I don't understand, Daniel admitted. "You will," Zelthor said. His voice carried a strange weight, a promise, and maybe even a warning. The professor moved on, leaving Daniel frozen in his seat. His eyes stayed low. He walked on his exam paper, but the words on it no longer mattered. His thoughts were spinning. Why him? Why did the professor trust him with something secret? What lay under the library? The exam ended and the alien students filed out silently. Some looked at Daniel with pity, some with disgust. The only human in class had failed. He felt their stares like knives, but in his chest, he carried something new. Not just fear, not just shame, a mystery. That night, as the moons of the alien world shone above the city, Daniel lay awake in his small dorm room. He could still hear the professor's voice. "If you want to pass, you must do something for me." The words haunted him. He should have been terrified. He should have forgotten about it. But instead, he felt something strange burning inside him. Curiosity. And deep down, a question that would not let him rest. What secret was the alien professor hiding beneath the library? The next morning, Daniel sat in the classroom again. but he could not hear a single word of the lecture. His mind was still stuck on the professor's strange offer. The exam had ended, and he was certain he had failed. Yet Professor Zelthor's voice kept echoing in his head. If you want to pass, you must do something for me. Why him? Why not one of the alien students, smarter and stronger than him? Daniel felt like a small stone in a river of giants. He was human, yes, but what could that matter to an ancient professor who seemed to hold the secrets of the galaxy in his eyes? When the lecture ended, the other students left quickly, their tails swishing, their wings folding, their claws tapping against the shining floor. Daniel sat frozen in his chair. He knew he should leave too, but his legs would not move. The classroom grew empty, and then he felt it again. The air grew heavier. The professor was standing right behind him. Daniel swallowed hard and turned his head. Zelthor's glowing blue eyes met his. The alien professor did not blink. He did not need to. Stay, the professor said simply. Daniel nodded, his throat dry. When the last student was gone, the great silver-scaled figure moved closer. His long robe shimmered like liquid light, and his horns almost touched the tall ceiling. You wonder why I chose you, Zelthor said, as if he could see directly into Daniel's thoughts. Daniel nodded again. Yes, I don't understand. Why me? I can't even pass the exam. The professor tilted his head slightly. Exams measure memory, but this task measures something greater: courage, curiosity, and humanity itself. The words made Daniel shiver. What do you want me to do? He whispered. The professor leaned closer, and for the first time Daniel saw a crack in that cold voice. It was not anger, it was something else, a shadow of longing. There is a chamber, Zelthor said slowly, beneath the great library of this university. It is older than the city itself, older than this world. Inside lies something I lost, something I must have back. Daniel frowned. What is it? The professor's eyes narrowed. You will know it when you see it. It is not the object itself that matters, but the journey. Only a human can walk that path. Only you. Daniel's stomach turned. The forbidden chamber? He had heard whispers from other students. They said the library had a basement no one entered. They said the walls moved like they were alive, that voices whispered to anyone who dared step inside. Some believed it was cursed. And if I refuse? Daniel asked quietly. The professor straightened, his shadow covering half the room. His voice dropped lower, colder. Then you will fail, not just this exam. You will fail the purpose for which you came here. The words stabbed deep. Daniel thought of his family back on Earth, their hopes when he left. He thought of his own dream, to prove that humans were not weak, not primitive, not small in the eyes of the galaxy. Could he really go back as a failure? Hi. His hands clenched. He whispered, What do I have to do? The professor's eyes gleamed. For a moment, they almost softened. Tonight, go to the library. When the moon is highest, a hidden door will open. Step inside. The chamber will test you. Bring back what lies at its end. Only then will you pass. Daniel's mouth was dry. But what if I can't make it? What if I die in there? Zelthor studied him, his expression unreadable. Then you will be remembered as the human who dared. That is more than most of your kind. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. He wanted to refuse, to run away, to hide under his blanket and never think of this again. But another voice inside him, a small stubborn voice, whispered, This is your chance. He lifted his chin. I'll do it. The professor's horns caught the light as he turned away. Good. Then prepare yourself. You enter tonight. Without another word, Zelthor walked out, his heavy steps echoing down the hall. Daniel sat there long after the professor was gone. His chest pounded, his hands trembled, but his eyes burned with something new. Fear, yes, but also determination. That evening, he skipped dinner. He walked alone across the silent university grounds. The twin moons glowed above, painting the towers and domes in silver light. The library rose before him like a mountain of glass and stone. Its doors were closed, its windows dark. He stood at the entrance, his heart beating faster than ever before. And then, just as the professor had said, he heard it. A faint sound, like a whisper. The ground trembled, and a hidden door appeared at the base of the library wall. The stones slid apart, forming a narrow passage into the earth. Cold air flowed out, carrying the smell of dust, old secrets, and something else Daniel could not name. He stared into the darkness. His body told him to run. His mind screamed to stop, but his feet stepped forward. The door closed behind him. He was inside the forbidden chamber. The The door closed behind Daniel with a heavy sound, like 1,000 stones pressing together. Darkness swallowed him whole. For a moment, he could hear nothing except the fast beat of his own heart. He tried to breathe slowly, but the air was strange, cold, heavy, almost alive. It carried the smell of dust, metal, and something older, like the scent of a storm before lightning strikes. Daniel reached out with shaking hands. The wall was rough under his fingers, carved with strange lines. They glowed faintly, as if his touch had woken them from sleep. He pulled back quickly, his chest tight. Then the glow spread. Symbols lit up along the tunnel, one after another like a trail of fireflies. Blue, green, and gold lights filled the darkness, guiding him deeper. Daniel whispered to himself, "What is this place?" His voice sounded too small, too weak in the endless stone hallway. He took his first step. The ground beneath him hummed, almost like it was listening. His footsteps echoed far away, as if the chamber stretched forever. As he walked, the symbols shifted. They rearranged themselves, forming words he couldn't read. The patterns moved like flowing water. Yet for a second, he thought he saw something. Numbers. Human numbers. The shape of a 5. The shape of a 9. Why would alien walls show human math? His hands grew sweaty. Maybe the professor was right. Maybe this place really was built for humans. But how? Who could have built this before? The tunnel widened into a huge hall. Daniel stopped, his mouth open. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows. Floating orbs of light hung in the air like stars, glowing softly. The floor was a mirror of black stone, reflecting the lights above, making it feel like he was standing in the middle of a night sky. At the far end stood a door, tall, silent, carved with more symbols. But between him and that door stood something else. A statue. It was not alien. It was human. Daniel's chest tightened. The stone figure had the face of a man, round eyes, strong jaw, short hair, the kind of face you might see on Earth walking down the street. The statue's hand pointed toward the door. "Impossible," Daniel whispered. His voice trembled. "Humans were never here, were they?" The statue's eyes suddenly glowed. Daniel stumbled back, fear racing through his veins. The air grew colder and the ground rumbled under his feet. A voice filled the hall, deep, echoing. Not the professor's voice, but something older. "Human, prove yourself." Daniel's legs almost gave way. Prove myself? How? The floor changed beneath him. The black mirror cracked into squares, shifting and floating apart. Pieces of the floor moved, forming a broken bridge across a dark pit that seemed endless. The door was on the other side. Daniel's breath caught. He stepped closer, peering down. There was no bottom, only darkness. The voice spoke again. "Doubt and you fall." His heart hammered. This was the first trial. Daniel placed his foot on the first square. It wobbled but held. He took another step. The stone glowed under him. But when he looked down, when he imagined himself falling, the square behind him cracked and dropped into the pit. Daniel gasped. The voice had warned him, "Doubt, and you fall." He clenched his fists. He forced himself to breathe. Don't think about falling. Don't think about dying. Just walk. Step by step he crossed. Each time fear filled his mind, a piece of the bridge crumbled away. Each time he fought the fear, the stones glowed brighter. Halfway across, his legs shook. Sweat dripped down his forehead. He could barely keep moving. He thought of Earth. He thought of his parents, waiting to hear if their son had made something of himself. He thought of the professor's cold eyes, and he stepped forward. Finally, he reached the other side. The last square glowed bright before sinking back into the floor, sealing the bridge behind him. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping. He had made it. Somehow, he had survived. The statue's voice whispered once more. "Courage, but courage alone is not enough." The tall door before him groaned and opened. Inside was another chamber, smaller, darker. Daniel stood, his legs weak, but he stepped through. This room was not empty. Its walls were covered in carvings, scenes of humans and aliens together, some fighting, some building, some standing side by side. In the center of the room stood a pedestal. On it lay a cube, glowing faintly. Daniel walked closer, his heart racing. The cube seemed to hum as if it was alive. The carvings around it seemed to move in the corner of his vision, showing battles and victories, failures and hope. When he reached out to touch the cube, the glow spread up his arm, warm, familiar, like the light of Earth's sun. And then he saw it. Inside the cube, locked in its shining core, was something small. A bracelet, old, simple, human. His breath caught. What is this doing here? The chamber whispered back, but the words were not clear. They were like echoes from long ago. Daniel pulled his hand back. The cube pulsed, as if waiting for him to decide. Was this what the professor wanted? And more importantly, why did an alien professor care so much about a human bracelet? Daniel stood frozen in front of the glowing cube. His reflection shimmered across its surface, warped by the light. Inside it, the simple human bracelet glimmered faintly, as if it was waiting for him. His hand trembled. He wanted to take it. He needed to take it, but deep inside, he knew the chamber wasn't going to make it easy. The voice from before returned, low, cold, heavy. Human, courage is not enough. To claim what is within, you must prove your mind. Daniel's chest tightened. His mind? Did that mean puzzles? Tests? He wasn't even sure he could pass a normal exam. And now this ancient place wanted to test him in ways no book could prepare him for. The cube lifted into the air. Slowly, the light from its surface spilled outward, painting the walls in moving patterns. The carvings shifted, like living drawings. Runes and numbers formed across the walls, glowing with fire blue light. Symbols he didn't know, shapes that bent and twisted. But mixed in between, he saw something shocking. Human numbers again. 1, 3, 7, scattered across the alien script. It was like the chamber was whispering, "You belong here." The cube's voice spoke again, echoing through his skull. Match the pattern, unlock the path. The walls shifted. 3 glowing circles appeared in front of him, each filled with alien numbers and human numbers mixed together. The first circle showed 1, 2, 3. The second, 2, 4, 8. The third, stranger still, was filled with alien runes, but at the center was the human number 5. Daniel's breath caught. This wasn't random. These were sequences, puzzles. The first looked simple, 1, 2, 3. The next must be 4. The second doubled each time, 2, 4, 8. The answer was 16, but the third wasn't clear. The alien runes swirled around the number 5, changing shape. Daniel's eyes hurt trying to follow them. They moved too fast. He squinted, forcing himself to look deeper. Then, suddenly, he saw it. The runes weren't random. They were counting down, 10, 9, 8, until only 5 remained. The missing number had to be 0. He swallowed hard and whispered, 0. The chamber pulsed with light. The first circle faded, then the second, then the third. The cube lowered back onto the pedestal, glowing brighter now. Daniel's shoulders dropped with relief. He had solved it. Somehow, he had solved it. But before he could reach for the cube again, the floor trembled. Cracks shot across the ground. The air grew colder. A second trial had begun. From the walls, shadows poured out. Dark shapes with no faces, no bodies, only outlines. They stretched tall and thin, their arms like blades, their eyes burning red. Daniel's throat went dry. His feet refused. Odi to move. The voice returned. Now prove your heart. The shadows hissed and closed in around him. Daniel stumbled back. His eyes darted toward the door. It was gone, sealed. He had no way out. One shadow lunged. Daniel ducked, rolling across the cold floor. Another slashed at him, its arm cutting through the air like fire. He scrambled up, heart pounding. He had no weapon, no training. He was just a human boy in a place built by gods. But then, he remembered the professor's words. Only a human can walk the path. Why? What made humans different? The shadows advanced again, surrounding him. Daniel closed his eyes. His mind screamed at him to run, but his heart whispered something else. Stand your ground. He lifted his arms, not in anger, not to fight, but to shield himself. I am not afraid of you, he shouted, though his voice cracked. The shadows froze. Their red eyes flickered. I came here because I was told to, Daniel continued, his chest shaking. But I'm staying because I choose to. If you want to test me, then do it. I won't give up. The words left his lips before he even thought about them. They came from deep inside, from the place that had carried him across galaxies, from the stubborn hope that humans were more than weak, fragile creatures. The shadows shivered. One by one, they melted back into the walls. The room grew quiet again. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping. His whole body shook, but he was alive. The trial was over. The cube floated again, glowing like a small sun. The bracelet inside gleamed brighter than ever. The voice whispered one last time, courage, mind, heart, you have passed. The cube settled back on the pedestal, waiting for him to take it. Daniel reached forward, his hand trembling. The light warmed his skin. When his fingers touched the cube, it pulsed and opened. The bracelet slid gently into his palm. And cold metal, simple design, human-made. Daniel stared at it, confused. This was it? This small thing was what the professor wanted? Why would an ancient alien care about something so ordinary? But as the bracelet rested in his hand, Daniel felt a strange warmth spread through him. Not from the cube, not from the room, but from the bracelet itself. It was like holding a piece of earth, and he knew deep down this was no ordinary object. The professor had sent him here for a reason Daniel was about to discover. Daniel stood in silence, the bracelet cold in his palm. For a long moment he could not breathe. The glowing cube had faded, the chamber had grown still, yet the simple piece of metal in his hand felt heavier than stone. It was human, there was no doubt. The design was Earth's. The tiny markings on the inside, letters worn by time, spelled a word he almost recognized. It was scratched, faint, but it looked like hope. Daniel's heart pounded. How could a human bracelet be here, hidden inside a chamber beneath an alien library on a planet light years away from Earth? He whispered, "This is impossible." The walls did not answer. The shadows were gone. The trials had ended, but the air still vibrated, as if the chamber itself was alive, watching him. He slipped the bracelet into his pocket carefully, as if it might break. Then he turned to leave. The great door behind him opened with a low groan, revealing the tunnel he had walked before. But now the glowing orbs were dimmer, the carved walls darker. It was as if the chamber had given him what it wanted to give, and now it had no more reason to shine. Daniel hurried forward, his legs weak. Every step felt heavy, not from fear, but from the weight of questions. Why would the professor want this bracelet? How did it get here? Who brought it? When he reached the end of the tunnel, the hidden stone door opened again, and cold night air rushed in. He stumbled out into the open, gasping as though he had been holding his breath for hours. The library towered above him, silent and unmoving, as if nothing had happened. But Daniel knew better. He had seen things inside that no alien student had ever seen. He looked up at the twin moons shining overhead. For the first time, he felt small in a different way, not because he was weak, but because he was part of something so much larger than he could imagine. Still clutching his pocket, Daniel walked back across the campus, his eyes darting at every shadow. The professor's words echoed in his head, "Bring back what lies at its end." When he reached his dorm, he shut the door quickly and leaned against it. His hands shook as he pulled out the bracelet again. He turned it over in the dim light. It was simple, worn, but the warmth he had felt inside the chamber returned, faint but steady. Daniel whispered, "Who did this belong to?" The bracelet did not answer, but his heart told him it carried a story. One older than the university, maybe older than the professor himself. Sleep did not come easily that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the glowing cube, the human statue, the shadows with red eyes. He dreamed of voices whispering his name, of stars falling into endless darkness. When morning came, he knew what he had to do. He returned to the lecture hall. The alien students sat in their rows again, silent and focused, but Daniel could not concentrate. His hand stayed pressed against his pocket, feeling the shape of the bracelet inside. When class ended, he stayed behind. His throat tightened as he waited. And like before, the air grew heavier. The professor appeared. Selthor's silver scales glimmered as he stepped closer, his glowing eyes locked on Daniel. "You went," the professor said softly. His voice was calm, but Daniel heard the weight behind it. Daniel nodded, his hand trembling as he pulled the bracelet from his pocket. I found this. For the first time, the professor's eyes widened. Not much, not enough for anyone else to notice, but Daniel saw it. The cold, unblinking gaze softened. He reached out, his long fingers trembling slightly, and took the bracelet from Daniel's hand. The alien held it gently, like something fragile, something sacred. His glowing eyes dimmed as he stared at it. "Yes," he whispered. "After all this time." Daniel swallowed. "Professor, what is it? Why does this matter so much?" Selthor looked at him for a long moment. Then he closed his hand around the bracelet and said quietly, "This belonged to the only human I ever called friend." Daniel froze. The word struck him harder than any exam ever could. A friend? An alien professor, older than the city, claiming he once had a human friend? The professor turned away, his voice almost breaking. He saved my life when I was young, when the universe was still crueler than it is now. This bracelet, he gave it to me as a gift, a promise of trust. Daniel's chest ached. He had never imagined this cold, powerful being could speak with such sadness. But how did it get here? Daniel asked softly. Zelthor's eyes glowed again, brighter this time. That is a question even I cannot answer. Perhaps the chamber was built to guard it. Perhaps it was destiny that brought you to it. All I know is this: it returned to me through you. Daniel stood speechless. He had expected punishment, or tests, or maybe even a trick. But what he saw in the professor's face now was something no one else in the class would believe: grief and gratitude. You passed the exam, Zelthor said finally, slipping the bracelet into his robe. Not by answers on paper, but by proving you could face what others could not. Daniel blinked. So, I pass? The professor's lips curved into the faintest smile, almost invisible. You pass. But as Daniel turned to leave, the professor spoke again, his voice low. Human, this is not the end. The chamber tested you for a reason, and the reason will soon reveal itself. Daniel froze. His heart pounded again. What did that mean? What reason? He left the hall with more questions than answers, but deep inside, he knew one thing: his life had changed forever. Daniel could not stop thinking about the professor's words. This belonged to the only human I ever called friend. The bracelet, the chamber, the trials. None of it made sense, yet all of it pulled him deeper into a story he did not understand. Why would an alien professor, so powerful and feared, hold such quiet sorrow for a single human from the past? That night, Daniel could not sleep. The moons outside his window bathed the city in silver light, but his mind was full of questions. Finally, when the rest of the campus was silent, he left his dorm and walked toward the tall tower where the professor's quarters were said to be. The halls were empty. Each step echoed as if the university itself was listening. At the end of the corridor, a tall door stood open. A cold light spilled out. Daniel hesitated. Then he stepped inside. The professor was waiting. Zelthor stood by the window, the bracelet held in his long hand. His silver scales shimmered faintly in the moonlight, but his eyes were not cold this time. They were far away, lost in memory. You came, the professor said without turning. Daniel swallowed. I had to. I need to understand. Who was he? The human you called your friend. The professor turned slowly, his horns casting shadows across the room. His glowing eyes met Daniel's, and for the first time, there was no icy judgment in them, only pain. Long ago, Zelthor began, before this university was built, before peace spread across these stars, there was only war. My people fought endlessly, against each other, against outsiders, against anyone who threatened our pride. I was young then, foolish. I believed strength was everything. Daniel listened quietly, his chest tight. One day, Zelthor continued, I was trapped, alone, injured, hunted by enemies. I should have died, but a human found me. A human? Daniel whispered. From Earth? The professor nodded. Yes, he was no warrior. He had no weapons but his mind and his stubborn will. He should have left me to die. Instead, he saved me. He carried me through fire and darkness, though it broke his body. He gave me this bracelet before he fell. He said it was a symbol, that even the smallest being could hold great meaning. Zelthor's hand tightened around the bracelet. His voice grew rough. I buried him with honor, but when I returned years later, the bracelet was gone, taken, lost, until now. Daniel's throat ached. He had never imagined that the professor, feared, powerful, untouchable, had once been saved by someone like him, by a human. That's why you needed me, Daniel said softly, because I'm human. The professor nodded. Yes, the chamber was designed for your kind, not for mine. I could never step inside. The trials would reject me. Only a human heart could survive them. Daniel frowned. But who built it? Why would an alien chamber exist for humans at all? For the first time, Zelthor looked uncertain. His eyes flickered. That is the question I have asked for centuries. Perhaps your people walked among the stars long before you remember. Perhaps there are truths about your past that even Earth has forgotten. Daniel's skin prickled. Was it possible? Could humans have been more than they knew? An ancient race that left behind secrets scattered across the galaxy? The professor's voice dropped lower. The chamber tested you because it was waiting for a human worthy of the bracelet. And now, it has chosen. Daniel's chest pounded. Chosen? Me? Zelthor's gaze sharpened. Yes, do not mistake this for chance. That chamber does not open without reason. You were meant to find it. Daniel shook his head. But I'm not special. I failed your exam. I'm just enough. The professor's voice cracked like thunder. You proved more than memory. You proved courage. You proved will. That is what matters. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. The weight of the professor's gaze pressed on him, but it was not cruel. It was heavy with expectation. You are not just my student anymore, Zelthor said slowly. From this moment, you are my apprentice. Daniel's heart jumped. Apprentice? Him? A human nobody from Earth? But why? He whispered. The professor stepped closer. His shadow fell across Daniel, but his voice was quiet now, almost gentle. Because the galaxy will not stay in peace forever. Shadows rise again. Old enemies stir. When that time comes, the bracelet will matter. And so will you. Daniel's breath caught. He looked down at the bracelet in the professor's hand. The small piece of metal seemed so ordinary, yet the way Zelthor held it was like a king holding a crown. The alien professor studied him for a long time, then said, You ask why I chose you. I did not. The chamber did. Silence filled the room. Daniel's mind spun, but deep inside something new burned, something stronger than fear. Destiny. At last, Zelthor turned away, staring once more at the moons beyond the window. Rest tonight, human. Tomorrow your training begins. Daniel left the room in silence. His legs trembled, his thoughts tangled. But one truth was clear. His life had changed forever. The exam had ended, but his real test was only beginning. The next day, Daniel walked into the lecture hall with a different heart. The alien students sat as usual, their glowing eyes flicking toward him with quiet disdain. To them, he was still a weak human who had no place in their class. But Daniel carried something they could not see, the weight of the chamber, the memory of the trials, and the professor's secret. Professor Zelthor entered, his silver scales shining under the tall lights. The room fell silent. His gaze swept over the class, cold and sharp as always, until it landed on Daniel. For the briefest moment, his eyes softened, almost unnoticeable, but Daniel felt it. The lecture went on, but Daniel's mind was elsewhere. His hand brushed against his pocket, where he had once held the bracelet. Now it was in the professor's possession, but its warmth lingered in his memory. He could still feel it against his skin, a reminder that the galaxy was bigger, older, and stranger than he had ever imagined. When the class ended, the professor spoke. Daniel, stay. The alien students glanced back, whispering in their strange tongues before filing out. Daniel's chest tightened. He remained seated as the hall emptied, until only he and the professor remained. Zelthor stepped closer, his voice low but firm. The others believe you failed. Let them believe it. They do not need to know the truth. Daniel nodded slowly. And the truth is, the professor's glowing eyes locked onto his, that you are no longer just my student. You are my apprentice. The word echoed in Daniel's ears. Apprentice. He had dreamed only of passing exams, of proving humans could stand equal among alien scholars. But this was far beyond that. What does that mean? Daniel asked carefully. The professor lifted the bracelet, holding it between two long fingers. The metal glowed faintly under the light, as if it still carried the chamber's power. It means, Zelthor said, that you will learn more than books, more than exams. You will learn secrets this university does not teach. You will train to see the galaxy as it truly is. Daniel's throat tightened. Why me? The professor's voice dropped lower, carrying the weight of ages. Because the chamber chose you, because the bracelet has returned, and because shadows are rising again. Daniel frowned. Shadows? Zelthor's eyes flickered, blue flames within them. There are forces that hate humanity, forces that would rather erase your kind than see you rise. My old enemies stir once more. When they come, this bracelet will matter, and so will sulk you. Daniel's heart raced. He had wanted only to pass an exam. Now he was being told he would stand against enemies older than history. I don't know if I'm ready, he whispered. The professor leaned closer, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. No one is ready when destiny calls, but you will learn. Daniel swallowed hard. Fear coiled in his stomach, but another feeling burned alongside it, something stubborn, something human, determination. What do I have to do? He asked. The professor studied him for a long moment, then slipped the bracelet back into his robe. His horns gleamed as he straightened. First, you will train, not as a student, as my apprentice. You will learn strength, discipline, and wisdom. You will prepare for what is coming. Daniel nodded, his chest pounding. Second, the professor continued, you must carry this truth carefully. Do not speak of the chamber. Do not speak of the bracelet. Not yet. Few would believe you. Fewer still would let you live if they knew. Daniel's mouth went dry. So it's dangerous? The professor's eyes hardened. More dangerous than you can imagine. Silence filled the hall. Daniel's mind swirled with fear, questions, and hope all at once. Finally, the professor stepped back. His deep voice carried across the empty room. You wished only to pass an exam, but the universe has given you something greater. A path. Daniel stood, his legs unsteady but his spirit burning. Then I'll walk it. The professor's lips curved in the faintest smile. Good. Humanity has always been full of surprises. Perhaps it is time the galaxy remembered that. The hall fell quiet again. Daniel looked around, realizing this was the moment everything changed. He was no longer just a boy struggling to keep up in alien classes. He was part of something older, something larger, and yet, a shadow remained in his heart. Because, if the professor was right, if enemies were rising, if the chamber had chosen him, then his journey was only beginning. The bracelet was not just a relic, it was a key, a warning, and maybe a promise. As Daniel walked out of the hall, the other students sneered at him, whispering their cruel jokes. He ignored them. They saw only a weak human. They didn't know the truth. Above the campus, the twin moons shone brightly, but beyond them, in the dark corners of the galaxy, shadows were already moving. And Daniel knew, sooner or later, those shadows would find him.